Thanks for the introduction and welcome to you all out there. We all know that we have to reduce our carbon emissions, and the Paris Agreement has been even more ambitious since it was signed by all countries in the world in 2015. We have to reduce the emissions by more than 50% before 2030, and that's less than 10 years left. But the good news is that our sector can do a lot to achieve this goal. Our claim is that it's possible to halve the emissions from our sector and even faster. And that's because the building and real estate sets the terms for other carbon intensive sectors. As a customer of the industry sector, as you know, we use more than it's about 40% of the materials. And we know that the materials is very carbon intensive. And I will show you some numbers on that later. But as a customer, we can do a lot to reduce these emissions. Also, the transport sector is related to the building sector because where we locate the building is important for the emissions from the transport sector. And of course, the energy sector. We also use 40% of the energy, and both the amount and type of energy is then important for the total emissions. So even if the building sector itself, especially in Norway, do not count for so much direct emissions, we are indirectly responsible for a lot. But that's also why we can reduce it. And here is some interesting numbers from Norway, because even if new buildings only is responsible for 1 to 2% of the building stock each year, 70% of the emission from the building sector in Norway comes from construction of new buildings, and only 30% from existing building. And that's because we use mostly hydropower for both heating and also operation of the buildings in Norway. And if you calculate with the Norwegian energy mix, it's 70-30. If you count with the European energy mix, it's a little bit different. It's then 50-50. But even then, it's interesting that the new buildings is responsible for so much of the emissions. And you can also add emissions from imported materials because the green numbers is from emissions in Norway. But we import the same amount of materials as we use locally. And that's why Norwegian building owners and demanders is responsible for even more and even more than for new buildings. If we break down the numbers, you can see here where the emissions come from. And when we talk about the existing buildings, it's a small amount, more than the half comes from heating and heating the buildings because of this hydropower, as I mentioned. And also for existing buildings, there is a lot of embodied energy in materials because we renovate and maintenance the existing buildings with new materials. But when we look at the new buildings, more than 50% comes from the embodied energy, and the rest is from building site construction work and waste handling. But the good news, as I said, is that we can reduce these emissions by 50%, and we can do that even now. Future Build is a pilot program and that have been existing for 10 years. And Norwegian Green Building Council is a partner in the Future Build program. In Future Build, we have more than 50 projects from all kind buildings, is dwellings, offices, kindergarten, schools, and so on. And to be a future build project, you have to prove that you reduce the emissions by 50%, both in energy for operational buildings, from the material used, and also the transport system. And if all new buildings and renovations do like the Future Build project, we have calculated that it's possible to reduce the same amount that all Norwegian cars emit during 1 year. So here's a lot to do. And we are also the experience that it's possible to reduce the emissions from materials by 20% with no extra costs. And it's possible to reduce by 40%. Then it's costs some more right now because it's new technology. But in the year to come, we are sure that the prices will be lower because the demand will rise. So we are not afraid of the costs of these reductions. I think it's more about knowledge. So in Green Building Council, we have made this cure with 5 points, how to halve the carbon emissions from buildings. First of all, we have to have less demolition. In Norway, we demolish 20,000 buildings each year. And we also calculated that if you demolish one building to build a new office building instead, in that place, it's the same emissions as the yearly emission of 5,000 cars. So it's a lot to save. We also made this booklet with some advice, how you can think twice before you demolish. And you find this at our website. The second point in our cure is to reuse more materials. And both Green Deal and the taxonomy has a goal to more reuse of materials. And at least in Norway, we are far from the EU goal. Norwegian Green Building Council made a member survey this year, and our members said that knowledge about reuse of materials is number one on the demand list. So here we also have a lot of work to do because we have to think in other ways. But now, in only 3 weeks, our office is moving to new locations. We will have new offices, and then we will move into a very exciting building called Spaces Tullin. The building owner here is Entra, one of our members. And in this building, it's a pilot project on reuse. 80% is locally reused, 80% of materials, and 15% is from other building. It's what we call a donor reuse. For instance, the concrete slabs here is from another building, and a lot of other materials as well. So we plan to make this as an experience center where we show with some marks, some information where the different building materials comes from and the history, and how we can motivate and inspire others to do the same. So welcome to our new offices in the Easter. The third point is to choose low carbon materials. And later on, we will hear a presentation of a producer of low carbon concrete. We also deal with that in Norway. And of course, wood is an interesting material in this setting. So by asking for low carbon materials, we can achieve a lot. We have also a booklet on that called the Green Material Guide. This is only in Norwegian, but there you find a lot of information about different materials, both the CO2 emissions, but also other environmental issues. And at the left side here, you see a project. It's a future-built pilot project that have used low-carbon concrete in the floors and a lot of massive wood constructions. And it's an example of a building that proved that it's only 50% emission from the materials compared to reference building. The fourth point is to have fossil fuel and soon also emission-free construction sites. And when we talk about emission-free, we are talking about electrical vehicles. Here is an example from the first building site in Oslo that is 100% electric. And here is one excavator that is fully relied on electricity. So as you maybe know, in Oslo, the municipalities have decided that all building sites should be first fossil fuel free and in some years to come also emission free when we have enough equipment and vehicles to provide all building sites with electricity. The last point in our cure is, of course, to also build energy efficient buildings. As you know, the EU Green Deal have a large project called the Renovation Wave, and we have started to work with that in Norway as well. As I started in the presentation to tell that 40% of the energy in society is used by buildings, of course, is a lot to save. We also many reports on that in Norway, and I'm sure you have in other countries as well, that it's possible to also halve the energy use in the building stock. So we also work with this. And we have some exciting projects. It's something called Powerhouse in Norway with different companies, with Entra as a building owner, but also Skanska and Asplan and others working together with a concept with Plus House energy produced at the roof, as you see as the building in the middle here with PV production. And these projects reduce the CO2 emission by more than 50%. So also that is possible with our technology today. Norwegian Green Building Council, the host today, is, as the other green building councils, a non-profit member organization. We are soon 20 years old. We have more than 300 members, and now we are 70 employees. And our vision is that sustainability as a natural choice for all our members and all the building and real estate sector. And we hope to motivate and inspire and give knowledge to the building sector so they can help to achieve the Paris goal and help to halve the CO2 emissions from buildings. Thank you.